So 20 years ago, we're having a barbecue in the garden with a glass of wine, and the two psychologists sitting together saying, the English education system is rubbish. And they were both passionate about special needs. And they said, if only we had our own school. 6 months later, we started. And we had 1 teacher and 5 children. So we now have 20 staff and up to 52 children with specific learning difficulties. So we're at the chalk face, so to speak. So specific learning difficulties, the project is bringing it into the heart of Europe. That's what we're trying to do, to actually bring reality into Europe. Yes. The title of the project is EU Specific Learning Disabilities, SpLD, Policy and Roadmap, and Specific Learning Difficulties, Teachers and Adult Learner Training. It's a 3-year project, 350,000 euros. It started in September last year and finishes in August 17. Partners are Estonia, Germany, Greece, Italy, Romania, Poland, and Slovenia. And we have from the previous project partners in here. Yanis was on the previous project, and Maria from Slovenia was on the previous project. I just want to make clear that in the UK we call specific learning disabilities specific learning difficulties, because we don't like the term disability. Okay? The language of the project is English, so obviously there's a major problem in that the translation is important so that we reach the maximum number of people. So that will be the subject of a future project after we finish the project in August 2017. To set the scene, so back in 2011 to 2013, I was a joint project coordinator of an EU Grundvig project, and that project was on SpLD, Roadmap for Teacher and Adult Learner Training. That project established this, that SpLD exists in all nations, ethnicities, cultures, and socio-economic backgrounds. They are hereditary, lifelong neurodevelopmental conditions. Although neurological in origin, the response to SpLD is educational. It consists of 7 learning disabilities coexisting to various degrees, which due to the same information processing deficiencies will require similar pedagogical approaches. So in the majority of the EU nations, the coexistence of such disabilities is neither accepted nor diagnosed. Therefore, there is little or no training for adults, teachers, nor support for children or students. Unidentified SpLD results in low self-esteem. How many teachers here? Right, well, you've all seen this in the classroom. Low self-esteem, high stress, atypical behavior, mental health problems, low achievement, and early school leaving. Unidentified SpLD can also result in lead to violence in school and antisocial behavior later in communities. In the worst case, and as Kate talked about it, in the worst case it can lead to criminal acts and imprisonment. However, the reverse is very true. We see every day at our school where children who have the support for their ongoing SpLD will become valuable citizens. We have people who've been at university, we've got a doctor, we've got a dentist, we've got engineers. They've all achieved. In mainstream education, they failed. So the Grundvig project took the first steps in exchanging experiences and information in the field of SpLD, leading to the development of methods and approaches in understanding their coexistence. And the great thing is now, as one of the first Erasmus Plus projects, Europe can take the next critical and essential steps to produce an EU SpLD policy and create an effective and consistent EU SpLD adult learner and teacher training program, which at last can finally address the major problems with unidentified and, as a consequence, unsupported SpLD. So what is SpLD? And what are the 7 learning disabilities that make up the umbrella term SpLD? Persons identified as having SpLD all show different intellectual and emotional profiles, strengths and weaknesses, learning styles, and life experiences. Within this context, SpLD can be seen as can be identified as distinctive patterns of difficulties relating to the processing of information within a continuum from very mild to severe, which may result in restrictions in literacy, language, number, motor function, short-term memory, and organizational skills. The experience of SpLD is key. From the outside, the children or the young people don't want to be seen as different. They want to be the same as their peers. But on the inside, there's this never-ending downward spiral if they're not supported. They get to a situation where nobody understands me. They want to shout for help, but sometimes they won't shout to help. Unless there's a system in place, an educational system in place, that identifies and helps and supports the people. So under our definition, SpLD, the umbrella term is dyslexia, dyscalculia, high-functioning ASD, ADHD, dyspraxia, developmental coordination disorder, and specific language impairment. But of course, related to that are associated emotional and social difficulties, and in the worst case, behavioral issues. For example, when we get children into our school, if they're 14, say, if you get a child in at 7, generally you don't come with any emotional or social difficulties. Get a child in at 14, and they've got damage, because this mainstream system has not supported them. And what we need to do is get to a situation where they become normalized again, they trust in education, and then they learn just like anybody else. And in our definition, all those people within the umbrella have average or above average intellectual abilities. So dyscalculia is the information processing problems which cause students to experience difficulties in dyslexic nature, short-term memory, sequencing and organization of information, and the speed of information processing can also cause many difficulties in many areas of mathematics. This is one that a lot of people find difficulty having within the umbrella term, and that is high-functioning autistic spectrum disorder. The distinction has been made between ASD and high-functioning ASD, where the individuals are not cognitively challenged, have average or above average intellectual abilities with comorbidity of SpLD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. All individuals with SpLD have short-term memory difficulties. This manifests itself, among other things, in concentration difficulties. When these concentration difficulties become so severe as to interfere with a child's ability to cope within all, can I repeat, all situations, not just some, but all situations, then it's usually referred to as ADHD. Cristiano talked about developmental coordination disorder or dyspraxia. Dyspraxia can affect any or all areas of development: intellectual, emotional, physical, language, social, and sensory, and may impair a person's normal processes of learning. Usually it's said to be an impairment or immaturity of the organization of movement. However, associated with this may be problems of language, perception, and thought. And finally, specific language impairment is a form of language impairment that is diagnosed when language abilities are below age expectations, but non-linguistic development abilities are within age expectations. So I'm often asked the question, why do we link these learning disabilities or difficulties within the umbrella term? The answer is fundamental to the rationale for this project. Cognitive, behavioral, and environmental factors can lead to the comorbidity, the coexistence, or the overlap between indicators of SpLD. And this is the reason why many labels may be attached to the same individual. When this occurs, the label which best describes these individuals is the umbrella term SpLD. Now, research on comorbidity, coexistence of specific learning difficulties has been done from the 60s right up to 2013, the latest stuff, and it is very clear that comorbidity is the rule, not the exception. So if you're in a class, you're a teacher and you have a class, you will have children there who don't just have dyslexia, they will have comorbidity of other learning difficulties. So what is the prevalence of SpLD in Europe? Well, it's impossible to establish the actual prevalence at this time for two main reasons: comorbidity and the lack of available statistics. However, we used the 2014 UK statistics and making a very conservative extrapolation. I'll say that again, a very conservative extrapolation to the 2012-13 Eurostat statistics. You can read that. In 2012, there were at least 41 million persons with generally unidentified and unsupported SpLD in the EU 28, and that's only in primary and secondary education. Key to our work is the Strategic Framework for European Cooperation in Education and Training, ET 2020. We will report into, well, we're actually reporting into, but we'll continue to report into the ET 2020 Schools Policy Working Group. And the mandate for that working group is ways to improve the effectiveness and quality of teacher education with a view to equipping teachers with the competencies required in the changing working environments, and The collaborative approach is inside and around schools that can support schools in their ambitions to provide success for all and prevent and reduce early school leaving. We will provide the working group with policy recommendations on SpLD and SpLD teacher and adult learner training. We have already produced a draft policy document which we've submitted and is now on the ET 2020 website. Our policy objectives are as follows. Now, we have to operate from a baseline. Unfortunately, the baseline is very low. In EU 28, there are differing stages of understanding of SpLD, and in many cases, the coexistence of such disabilities is neither accepted nor diagnosed. We will define SpLD and their coexistence and produce an SpLD policy, definitions, and a teacher-adult learner training document. Within EU 2020, we will produce an EU SpLD implementation plan of SpLD teacher training and adult learner training. We will create an EU teacher and adult learner training website, which is already operational, www.euspld.com, www.euspld.com, and we're already populating that website. We will create and establish by August 2017 on the SpLD training website 3 levels of massive open online courses, or MOOCs, in the English language. After publication, we will make recommendations regarding translation of the website and the MOOCs. Regarding the MOOCs, research into MOOCs makes it very clear that the way ahead is to produce what's called just-in-time learning, just-in-time training, within a competency-based model. And that's the model we're using. So there's going to be 3 levels of training, all increasing in levels of knowledge and interest for different people. The first level of training will be for parents, adults. It's a guide to SpLD only. School training, teaching assistants, volunteer support workers within schools, etc. That level of training is ongoing right now. We have the first 2 units actually on the website, the rights of the child, and then the outline of SpLD, and there's another 8 units going on there. The idea is for anybody at the various levels to jump in and out of the training at any time. So if you're a classroom teacher, you'll be able to jump in at level 2, and if you want to brush up on certain aspects of SpLD, you can jump in there and use it. If you're a specialist, you'll have the 3rd level of training, and you can go in there. If you're a parent or a support worker, a teaching assistant, you can go in at level 1. But it doesn't stop you going into level 2 or 3.